Warlocks, it's your turn on The Price is Right. Today we're talking about Solo Flawless on a Warlock for Sunder Doctrine. Previously we did Titans already. You can watch that video here if you'd like. But for today we're covering Warlocks. And just to be very clear, this is not a dungeon guide, this is a Solo Flawless guide. So going into this, you should be somebody that's already completed the dungeon and knows how the base mechanics of the dungeon work. So you can go into this, getting your emblem or your seal done, etc. Let's jump straight into Encounter 1. So I'm going with the assumption that you, the viewer, know how to do the dungeon, or at least have the base understanding of it, and now you just want to know how to do it solo and efficiently. The main thing to know here is that there is a wrong way and there is a correct way. The wrong way summons you a Tormentor. The correct way saves you plenty of time because you only need the minimal amount of lenses put in to actually beat the encounter. What I mean by this is a lot of people just put in 3-4 lenses just to get one singular room done, and that wastes you a ton of time and a ton of ammo for no reason. And you can save time plus save killing a bunch of extra subjugators by optimizing how many lenses you actually need to get rooms done. 3 of the 4 rooms in this encounter can be done with just 2 lenses, and that's it. The only exception is going to be R1, the bottom right, which needs 3. So for that, I'm just going to copy and paste my explanation from my previous video with the Titan. Just ignore that it's Titan gameplay, and we're going to just break down how you can optimize these rooms right here now. So here's the main layout of the room. You have your L1, L2, R1, R2, the 4 rooms. Then you have the main lenses in the middle, which will control everything. So, let's say as an example, you started L2. The room happened to be there, and it happened to be the correct room, right? You're going to kill the subjugator, pick up the lens, and then you're going to head back to the middle. Since we know that it's L2, top left, what you can do from here is use the middle lens to point directly to the top of the room right here into this empty socket. You would then put your lens into this socket and then turn it to the left, because it'll aim straight to this static lens, which will then aim straight to this socket in the room that you just came from. So all you have to do at this point is go back into L2, there'll be a new subjugator up, you're going to pop your barricade and nuke the subjugator again with Le Monarch, and after the room is clear, you pick up that lens and then put it into the socket that's right next to the wheel, and when you do, the room is complete, assuming that it's pointing to the wheel, which it should be. Now back to the lenses for a second. You can do the exact same strategy with the R2 room. You again point the middle main lens to the top of the room, then rotate it to the right, which will point to a static lens that's going to R2, and then again at the end, there'll be another socket for you to put a lens in, which will point exactly at the wheel. However, keep in mind that you cannot use the same main lens to point to 2 different rooms in the same phase. So as an example again, the first phase, you only need 1. You use the middle lens to point to the left room, L2, and you finish that off. The next phase will begin, and you can once again use that middle lens, and you point it to R2 this time and finish that room. However, in the second phase, you need 2 different wheels lit up, which means this middle main lens cannot be used again as it's already connected to R2. Instead, you're going to have to use the left or the right lens for your next connection. Let's look at the map one more time, so I'll show you guys L1 and R1. For L1, you can again do a 2-lens strat. You can accomplish this by using the left main lens in the center of the room and point it towards this empty socket right here, which you can then turn to point towards this static lens. It looks like it's going to L2, but it's actually not. It's going to then put the beam down towards the middle empty socket in L1, which you then put your second lens into, and that will connect it to the 2 static lenses right here, which will lead directly to the wheel in L1, and that will be done as well. Lastly, we have R1. This one will take you 1 extra lens for 3 total, but it's not too bad. So for this one, you want to start in the main room again, and you're going to point the right main lens towards this empty socket right here, which will then point to this empty socket right here. So this is where you need 2 different lenses in the center of the room. And from here, it'll point towards this static beam. This beam will go straight into R1, and then you will finally need 1 last lens to put into this empty socket here, which will connect to R1, and then you'll be done with this room. Now, as for loadout recommendations in this encounter, you can go with several things. You can go with a Well of Radiance build, a speaker side build to just keep your healing up, spam Song of Flame, anything like that. Me personally, in this encounter, I went with Arc Warlock with the idea of I'm going to spam Blinding and Ionotrasis as much as I can, along with my super with Geomags. That way, I'm just spamming supers basically in either every room or every other room in this encounter and getting rid of the subjugators very, very easily. Also, in case you do want to copy my builds 1-for-1, I will leave dim links for these in the description below in case you want to try them yourself. But if you don't know how the Arc Warlock specifically works for this new episode, I'll have a full breakdown build video for that, so if you don't, stay tuned for that. Otherwise, just copy the dim links. Weapon-wise in this encounter, I recommend 2 things. Number 1, an Eager Edge Sword. Not only just to zoom around and get around the rooms faster, but it also can be used as an emergency backup in a tight situation. For example, let's say you're heading into a room and for some reason there's still stasis scions alive, and one of them throws that stupid annoying dust field onto you. You can utilize an eager edge sword to get immediately right out of that and not risk being frozen and then just nuked by a subjugator. So it's both good for zooming around and for some utility to survive. The other weapon I recommend is going to be either Choir of One, which is an exotic from an exotic mission that some people don't have. If you don't have that, then I recommend literally any good fusion rifle. It doesn't matter which one, as long as it's decent and it can shoot towards a subjugator, you can use that. You could go with Cartesian, Scatter Signal, Null Composure. In this video, you can see me using Delicate Tomb. It doesn't matter. Either way, it can nuke subjugators because of the Particle Reconstruction perk in your artifact. So just bring a fusion rifle, regardless of what it is, into this encounter. Additionally, if you have any sort of blinding utility in your kit or in your weapon arsenal, you could also bring that for added insurance against gators so they don't one-shot you. And with that in mind, it should be relatively easy for you to get through this encounter, so let's move on to number 2, the Zoetek Lockset boss. So this first boss fight, I think it's pretty fair to say, is the real final boss of this dungeon when you're trying to solo Flawless, particularly on Warlocks and Hunters. My mindset going into this is I want to spend as little time as possible in this room, because the more time I spend in it, the more likely you can make a mistake, and when you make a mistake, it's pretty much game over unless you have some critical, insane recovery. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to give a strategy where you spend as little time as possible and do the most damage you can in as little time as possible. For this boss fight, we're utilizing the one-wheel strategy. If you don't know what that is, simply put, you start at the beginning wheel, which is the top right wheel, and you always want to put kill on it to go into the damage phase as fast as you can. The only issue with this is you need to go very, very fast, because the wheel does not give you extra time. It's on a strict schedule. If you miss it, then you're effed. Basically, you want to put in the kill symbol into the wheel before the lock set is at 75%. Otherwise, it's just going to do something else, and that's going to kind of ruin your run. So the idea is going to be look at the wheel immediately at the start of the fight and know how many spins you need, either left or right, depending if it's clockwise or counterclockwise. So you might need 3 to the left, 3 to the right, 1 to the left, 1 to the right, etc. While dealing with the left side, I also try to throw an Ionic Sentry towards the middle, the center of the bridge. That way, while I'm fighting the left adds, my Sentry could be killing all the adds and the wizard in the middle, saving me time having to kill it myself. So that way, when I kill the left, I just pick up the knowledge and run over straight towards the wheel. And depending on how many I need, I can either just immediately dunk it, or I can pick up the knowledge from the middle, and if I need to, also pick up the knowledge for the third wizard, and then immediately dunk all of them to make my wheel match to kill. Next comes the damage phase. So for this portion, you want to try to have a sentry to throw straight in between 2 of those shriekers on the right-hand side. Once you do, you want to go ahead and jump towards the right door frame that is next to the 4th shrieker boss. As soon as damage phase starts, you're going to be using your heavy weapon, which is going to be Parasite. Since you just took out a small village of Hive, now you'll have 20 shots in your Parasite ready to go for the maximum shot boost. Throw it at the boss for some nice damage, and then immediately after that, jump towards the boss and activate Chaos Reach. And if you line yourself up correctly, kind of in the center of that little box shape you see in the Shrieker closest to you, and then line up with the final Shrieker on the far left, you can hit 3 or even all of the 4 Shriekers at the same time and do nutty damage for just 1 Chaos Reach's worth. Then, once your super's over and you're falling down, you can fire 1 more Parasite towards a Shrieker for some last bonus damage. Once you land, you do one of 2 things. You either pop a Healing Rift if you're really low health. If not, you start going an ability spree on the enemies. Try to use your melee immediately, and then your sentry if you have it built back up, particularly on the yellow bar Hive Knight. If you don't want to waste your grenade on that Hive Knight, or you don't have your sentry back up, you can actually fire 1 Parasite shot at him, and that should just straight up kill him, or make him low enough where you can finish him for green ammo with the Finisher artifact perk. Once you successfully completed that 1 full loop, congrats! You have learned everything there is to this boss fight on this build now. All you have to do is just repeat this 4 times, and you will most likely get the kill done. It's pretty comfortable to get it in 4 phases. My boss was down to like 5% maybe after my 3rd phase, so I think it's pretty confident to say 4 phases will get the job done. Now, the only thing you have to watch out for is having to get your super back in time and the dependence on how many knowledges your wheel is going to need. Let's say, for example, my 1st phase, the wheel only cost 2 spins for me to get, right? 2 knowledges to dunk into the wheel, and then I was good to kill. Now, the next phase, It could be 2, it could be 1, it could be 3. That's kind of the RNG that you have to mess around with. But luckily, statistically, the odds are in your favor because you're more than likely not going to have to deal with 3 every single phase, and that's really helpful because let's say you started with 2 on phase 1, and then you only needed 1 to get everything done for phase 2. This means that the extra wizard whose knowledge you didn't even pick up to start the first damage phase, that knowledge is still there, so you can go pick that up and then immediately dunk it into the wheel and it'll be on kill. Then at that point, you're just waiting for the lock set to get to 75%, and while it's doing that, you want to get your super off of the next wave of ads that spawn in, and then you're good to go for damage phase number 2. The number one tip that I can give while you're going between damage phases in this fight is going to be immediately check your wheel for what it needs and what side it's rotating. Make sure it's going clockwise or counterclockwise wherever you want it to go, so it's already set up to that direction, and then go deal with the extra ads and whatever extra knowledges you need, then dunk it in. Don't go after the knowledges and then go back to the wheel, accidentally forget which side it needs to go to, and you dunk and it's the wrong direction, because then it's basically going to be a wipe. And again, you have to go fast. Do not try to dunk last second because the game will screw you over. Just keep practicing until you're used to it, and then it should be a smooth process from there. That being said, that's pretty much all I have for this encounter. Hopefully this helps. Let's move on to the final boss. So for Kirov, I'll be completely honest, for Warlocks, this is a pretty easy fight. Yes, even solo. You need to do very minimal things to get through this, and you have tons and tons of healing options in the event that you happen to get low health sometimes. So for this boss fight, all you need to bring mainly is going to be a heal clip weapon. Doesn't matter what it is, literally anything, as long as you can activate heal clip consistently, and then bring Queenbreaker bow. If you don't have Queenbreaker, go get it. Zer's been selling it for 2 weeks now, so there really shouldn't be any reason why you don't own it already. And then try to get the Catalyst if you don't have it already. It makes a gigantic difference in how many phases it'll take you to kill the boss. Now for the mechanics of the fight, if you know the lore of the game, I would just say ignore the Grim, or at least chasing the Grim to find symbols, and just read the wheel on your own. If you're not familiar with the lore, then go use the Grim so you're 100% certain and you don't screw anything up. And again, I'm assuming that you have completed the dungeon before watching this, so I'm not going to go over how the wheel actually works. You should already know that, so we're going to move on from that. Next up, what was I using in terms of build crafting in this fight? So, I went with 2 different setups. Number 1 is going to be the healing build, which is going to be in 90% of the fight, basically anything but the damage phase. The dim link for that build will be in the description below, but the main idea is I'm rocking the Karnstein's exotic gloves. That way, whenever I get a melee, I get Cure and Restoration procced for my character. Then, if I apply that and do Phoenix Dive, I will give myself X2 Resto, which is extremely strong for healing. I basically become an unkillable machine at this point, unless something can one-shot me, which in this case, basically nothing can do that, so I'm fine. So the basic loop for you would be get into a room or a space where there's a ton of ads, you melee one of those ads, they die, then you proc Phoenix Dive, you now have double resto, and you can spam whatever primary weapon you have, killing the rest of the ads with no trouble at all. This includes having to deal with those stupid husks and their explosions after they've been killed, and you can still live even through those, so it's really helpful that you apply this combo in each room. Now the trash mobs have been dealt with. What about those annoying gators? So this goes back to the first encounter. Fusion rifles absolutely nuke these gators. Additionally, in this encounter, that left door that's super annoying to open, fusion rifles are also really good for that, so I opted to run scatter signal. But again, you could run literally any decent fusion that you'd like. The objective here is to basically get to an angle where you can start spamming particle on a gator. It applies the debuff, making your fusion rifle stronger, and by the time that the gator does his little transformation to go in aggro mode, the fusion rifle has either already killed him or made him so low that you can just finish them and just easily kill the gator and move on. If you'd like, you could use something offensive like fusion grenades, but I think personally, talking to the average player or someone who hasn't done solo stuff very consistently, I would just go with a healing grenade just so you have another out to heal yourself if you happen to need it. And going back to that stupid door for a second, fusion rifles can 2-shot that door. I personally do 3 shots when I'm solo flawless because, well, I just don't trust the game to not kill me, honestly. So I make sure I shoot 3 shots, then I walk through, and I am fine. Also, while you're shooting the door, make sure you actually shoot the door frame and not the insides of the door, because shooting the inside does nothing, so that could potentially kill you if you're doing that. And lastly, the damage phase for the boss. So the spot is pretty standard, the back left corner of the room. You can sit here, not get hit by the fire, and then you can also break line of sight when Kirov does his little strand attack to pull you in. If you break line of sight, he does not pull you in. Now, for the DPS portion, there's going to be a second build, or a build swap in this case. Sorry for people that don't like the swap. This is really optimized, and you should do it if you can, because it just really helps you do less phases on the boss. So the idea is you're going to be on Karnsteins all the way up to the damage phase. But why are you doing that, Sneak? Is it really worth it? Yes, it is absolutely worth it. Stay with me here. So, we are loadout swapping to Prismatic Arc Warlock, which will have Sanguine Alchemy equipped as the exotic. Sanguine boosts the damage affinity of whatever super we have equipped. So we want Queensbreaker, which is Arc, so we're going Prismatic Arc. Then, while we're on Prismatic Arc, we are going to have two specific fragments equipped. Facet of Courage and Facet of Solitude. Solitude severs a boss target when you get multiple precision hits onto them. That's a Darkness debuff. Then Courage, when you proc a Darkness debuff, your light ability damage is increased. When you're in Well of Radiance, which you just popped before loadout swapping, well, basically makes it so that your bullets or your shots are now ability damage, light ability damage at that. So, basically, one single loadout swap gives you bonus damage from Sanguine, which will give you an X4 Arc Weapon Surge, then Courage and Solitude proc when you're shooting the boss, thus giving you bonus damage from that as well, and also Sanguine when shooting the boss will mark that boss and also give you bonus damage. So you're getting 3 different sources of bonus damage just by doing one single loadout swap, so I do think it is absolutely worth it. Once the damage phase is over, simply just go back into that corner so you don't burn, then swap back to your Karnstein build for the healing process, and then repeat the boss fight all over again. If done correctly, you should get it in about 4 phases, assuming the boss doesn't start being a crackhead and just moving around left and right constantly during damage. Otherwise, you might do a 5th phase, but aside from that, it's pretty smooth and pretty consistent. And that is my solo flawless guide for Warlocks in the Sundered Doctrine Dungeon. Hopefully this helps some of you guys out. If you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you can leave Geomags as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.